Many people consider the English landscape garden to be England's greatest contribution to world culture, along with Shakespeare and the country house. Here, the landscape appears natural, with rolling lawns, trees planted in groups rather than avenues, and a lake of irregular shape, as if in the countryside. In the early years of the 18th century, the artist and designer William Kent began to compose gardens to look like landscape paintings, with small, beguiling buildings, attractive groves of trees, and in which the strolling visitor was an important element of the composition. Kent is recognised as the father of the English landscape garden and a pioneer of the picturesque. Before Kent, most gardens were arranged in the formal French or Dutch style, with rectangular parterres, straight avenues and paths, clipped hedges with topiary, and water contained in canals or in formal geometrically shaped basins. Claremont in Surrey had just such a garden, with a round water basin and a gigantic earthwork amphitheatre. Kent's alternative vision of Claremont was of rolling sweeps of ground and groves of trees. His style was revolutionary, moving from a method that sought to establish pattern and order in nature to one that rejoiced in its variety and irregularity. Kent's earliest known executed garden design was for Shotover in Oxfordshire. The existing garden was laid out in a formal manner. Although he did little to soften the rigid geometries of the landscape, a perspective view of the garden shows Kent reaching towards a radically different approach. Kent created a wilderness garden with informal winding paths. He positioned an octagonal temple on an artificial mound, surrounded by a newly planted grove of trees. Kent rarely had the luxury of beginning with a blank canvas. He had to make changes to existing gardens that often required large-scale earthworks. The entire hill shown in this drawing of Holcombe was artificial. It is made from the earth dug out to form the lake. In this design for Claremont, Kent has written notes to the workmen instructing the removal of an entire terrace and the sinking of a path higher up the slope. Notice how the trees on the left frame a distant prospect like wings in a theatre, and how a grove of evergreens draws the eye to a carefully positioned statue. To achieve a painterly effect, Kent often contrasted his garden structures with a backdrop of dark-coloured evergreens, composing the light and shade of his landscapes as if he were working on canvas. Today at Rousham, the descendants of Kent Scott's pines still form the background to the Temple of Echo. Perhaps Kent's greatest insight was to incorporate the entire landscape into his designs. To create the illusion of unbroken landscapes, Kent used several techniques, including a ha-ha, a ditch that separated gardens from grazing land but was invisible from a distance. Cattle could be kept securely in their fields without the need of hedges or fences to interrupt the view. At Rousham, Kent extended the views into the distance by designing Gothic-style alterations to an old mill on the other side of the river. High up in the hills, he created a large triple-arched architectural folly called the eye-catcher, its sole purpose to direct the eye toward the fields above the garden. The strolling visitors that Kent so often includes in his design drawings are an essential part of his compositions, as Kent's gardens are designed to be like landscape paintings that can be entered and moved through. This is the Elysian Fields at Stowe. Created in the mid-1730s, it is considered one of Kent's masterpieces. It is designed to be experienced in motion as the visitor walks through the landscape. Above on the rising ground, glimpsed through the trees, is the Temple of Ancient Virtue. On reaching its steps, a view opens up across the river to the Temple of British Worthies, where busts of 16 noteworthy men and women are enshrined, prompting reflection on virtue and greatness. In the distance are more buildings, each one encouraging further exploration. After a long walk around the lake at Stowe, a pediment seat decorated with pebbles offers a place to pause, before continuing to the Temple of Venus to look out over the water toward the main house. Kent's carefully crafted views are best appreciated from the seats he designed and scattered throughout his gardens. At the end of the bowling green at Rousham, a rustic wooden seat provides a place to relax and watch the river flow beneath the stone bridge. A little further down the hill is the Praeneste, named after the ancient Roman town, with benches designed by Kent from which a spectacular view opened up across the Cherwell Valley. Kent's gardens often announce themselves with spectacular gates, entrances and lodges on the perimeter of the landowner's holdings. When the Duke of Beaufort rode with his guests from Badminton House to Worcester Lodge, they would walk up the stairs to the banqueting room, where they would be greeted by extraordinary views back toward the main house. Kent designed another magnificent banqueting house at Euston, where the Duke of Grafton and his guests could watch the deer coursing across the park. At Lord Burlington's garden at Chiswick, he designed a structure made entirely of hedges, with carefully positioned statues known as the exedra. After years of experimenting with cascades in different commissions, he created the spectacular Vale of Venus at Rousham, which boasted a triple cascade and fountain that is said to have spouted water up to 50 feet into the air. Kent also delighted in designing unusual and exotic garden structures, chinoiserie pavilions, Egyptian obelisks, hermitages. And this lone surviving building from Kent's great lost garden at Esher Palace, derived from Italian Renaissance garden grottos. And perhaps the most peculiar building of all, Merlin's Cave at Richmond, which had 3 conical thatched roofs and was filled with life-size waxwork figures chosen by Queen Caroline to portray the rise of the Hanoverian dynasty, as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy by the magician Merlin. Kent's greatest strength was his ability to incorporate these imaginative and exotic notes into natural-looking topographies that were indisputably English, a place where it was possible to believe that Tritons might descend among the Gothic towers of Esher and Hampton Court. During his career, Kent created more than 50 garden buildings, a body of work that is unrivalled in inventiveness and variety.